The galaxy was at war. Not just any war, a war of champions. The Zenith Accord, an ancient interstellar coalition, had long upheld peace through ritualized combat, a system where planets sent their finest warriors to resolve disputes. But now, an unstoppable force, the Zirac Dominion, had shattered that peace. Their warriors were monstrous, bioengineered titans bred solely for battle. The Accord was losing. In a desperate bid, the Accord turned to the one species they had always feared inviting to the games, **humanity**. ### the summoning. Aboard the Warstation Celestial Tribunal, Grand Arbiter Vos Keln watched the holographic feed of yet another Accord champion being torn apart. His fur bristled with frustration. The Zirac were making a mockery of the games, and if they won, they wouldn't stop at a ceremonial victory, they would conquer everything. "We must activate the Outlier Clause," said High Strategist Telvanna, her 4 insectoid arms folding in resignation. Vos Keln hesitated. "We swore never to invite them. And we swore to preserve peace," she shot back. "The humans were excluded because we feared what they might do. But right now, we need what they might do." Keln exhaled through his snout. "Send the summons." Across the galaxy, Earth's skies split open with beams of shimmering light. The finest warriors of humanity, soldiers, fighters, strategists, were pulled into the stars. ### Earth's finest. General Elias Kane of the United Nations Defense Force found himself standing in a coliseum of alien proportions. Beside him, a collection of Earth's best. Danny Rains, undefeated MMA champion with an unbreakable will. Sergeant Major Holt, a cybernetically enhanced Special Forces operative. Professor Julian Renshaw, a tactical genius and historian of warfare. Corporal Juno Estrada, a demolitions expert who could turn anything into a weapon. Dr. Aisha Patel, a bioengineer whose mind could rival supercomputers. Thousands of alien delegates looked down from the stands, whispering in hushed tones. The humans had arrived. ### the first test. Vos Keln stepped forward. "You have been summoned because the Accord faces annihilation. You will fight in the Grand Games as our champions." General Kane's sharp eyes scanned the arena. "What's the catch?" "Your first test begins now." The ground shook. A Zirac gladiator, towering at 10 feet, its body plated in living metal, stepped forward. Its claws dripped with the blood of fallen challengers. Danny Rains cracked her knuckles. Finally. A fair fight. The Zirac warrior charged. It moved faster than something its size had any right to. The crowd gasped, expecting a quick kill. Danny moved first. She ducked, pivoted, and with a single explosive strike, drove her fist into the creature's knee. A sickening crack echoed through the stadium. The Zirac roared in pain, then staggered as Holt, moving with inhuman precision, fired a concussive round into its exposed joint. The beast lunged at Julian Renshaw, expecting an easy kill. Instead, the professor, with cold calculation, led it, every motion measured, every weakness identified. "Juno, now!" Corporal Estrada hurled a modified grenade directly into its gaping maw. The explosion sent the Zirac crumbling to the ground. It twitched once. Then, silence. The arena was dead quiet. Then, roaring applause. Vos Keln turned to Telvanna, stunned. "They took down a Zirac in seconds." Telvanna smirked. "We should have called them sooner." ### A dangerous invitation. As the dust settled, Kane turned to Vos Keln. "You said this was a test. What's the real fight?" A deep, guttural laugh echoed from the highest balcony. The warriors turned to see Emperor Malzir, supreme ruler of the Zirac Dominion, watching them with cold amusement. "Humans," he rumbled. "You are interesting." He leaned forward, his predatory gaze locked onto them. "I accept your challenge." The air in the arena turned electric. The games had truly begun. The deafening silence following Emperor Malzir's words was more unsettling than the battle itself. The Zirac leader had just accepted the humans as worthy opponents, a rare honor, but also a declaration of brutal intent. General Kane kept his expression unreadable, though his mind raced. They had just barely defeated a single Zirac warrior. Now, they would have to face the best of their kind in a fight for the fate of the galaxy. The stakes revealed. Voss Keln motioned for the humans to follow him into the war chambers beneath the Colosseum. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing battle records of past champions, none of whom had ever defeated a Zirac in direct combat. "You must understand the gravity of what just happened," Telvanna said. "By defeating a Zirac, you have altered the course of this war. But Malzir is no fool. He will not let you win so easily." Dr. Patel studied the displays, frowning. "These creatures are genetically engineered for war. Their muscle density alone is 3 times that of a human. How did we just take one down so quickly?" Voss Keln hesitated before answering. "Because you fight differently." Professor Renshaw smirked. "We don't just fight, we think. Training for the impossible." A challenge had been issued, and the next round of combat would not be a simple duel. The humans would face an elite kill team, a squadron of Zirac warriors bred specifically for gladiatorial warfare. With only days to prepare, the humans worked tirelessly. Danny Rains sparred against alien combat drones, learning their attack patterns and developing counters. Sergeant Major Holt modified his cybernetics for speed rather than brute force, knowing that outmaneuvering the Zirac was their best bet. Corporal Estrada worked on crafting explosives that could disrupt the creature's bioarmor. Dr. Patel studied Zirac physiology, searching for any overlooked vulnerabilities. Professor Renshaw and General Kane strategized, breaking down battle simulations frame by frame, looking for patterns in the enemy's movements. As the team honed their abilities, the Accord watched in awe. No other species had adapted so quickly. A warning from the enemy. One evening, as Danny was cooling down from an intense training session, a shadow fell over her. She turned to see a Zirac warrior standing just outside the chamber, a creature even larger than the one she had fought. "I am Vaktar," the beast growled, its voice a deep rumble. "I will be your executioner in the arena." Danny wiped sweat from her brow and smirked. "Big talk for a dead man walking." Vaktar let out a low, guttural chuckle. "I watched you fight. You are strong for a human. But you are not prepared for what comes next." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Malzir will not allow you to leave this competition alive. The moment you step into the next battle, you will see what the Dominion truly is." Then, with a final glance, he turned and walked away. Danny narrowed her eyes. This wasn't just a fight, it was an execution. The moment arrives. The day of the battle arrived. The Colosseum was filled with tens of thousands of alien spectators, their voices rising in anticipation. The humans stood in the center of the arena as the gates opposite them groaned open. From the shadows emerged 5 towering figures, their bodies gleaming with biometal plating. The Zirac kill team had arrived. General Kane muttered, "Remember the plan. Strike first. Strike hard." The countdown began. 3, 2, 1. The battle was on. The Zirac kill team stood taller, stronger, and faster than before. Whatever biological enhancement Malzir had triggered, it had turned the already formidable warriors into something even worse, monsters, Danny Rains wiped the blood from her chin, rolling her shoulders despite the pain. "All right," she muttered. "Time to get serious." Breaking the cycle. General Kane analyzed the Zirac's movements. They were no longer simply warriors, this was something beyond that. The creatures moved with perfect coordination, each acting as an extension of the others. "They're linked," Dr. Patel whispered through comms, staring at her data feed. "This enhancement, It's a neural synchronization. They're fighting as one. Kane didn't hesitate. Then we break the link. Professor Renshaw had already come to the same conclusion. There's always a weak point in a system this complex. If we disrupt the synchronization, they lose their advantage. Holt locked and loaded. Then let's find it before they rip us apart. #### the new attack. The first Zirac lunged at Holt, moving impossibly fast. Holt barely dodged, rolling away as the alien's claws tore through the stone arena floor like paper. Danny dashed forward, pivoting at the last second to deliver a brutal roundhouse kick to its head. This time, her blow barely staggered it. "They're absorbing damage better," she growled. Meanwhile, Estrada finished setting up her next explosive, one of her most dangerous yet. "This is an electromagnetic disruptor," she explained. "If their enhancement is tied to a neural network, this should fry it." Kane nodded. "Time it right." The Zirac warriors surged forward. Danny and Holt barely held the line, dodging, countering, but losing ground fast. Then, Vaktar moved. ### the warrior's choice. Vaktar, the only Zirac who had spoken to Danny before the match, had been watching the fight with an unreadable expression. He had seen something that even Malzir had not. The humans could win. They weren't like other species. They adapted. They endured. They fought dirty. And they didn't break. Something inside him shifted. With a sudden roar, he turned, not toward the humans, but toward his own kind. Before anyone could react, Vaktar grabbed the nearest Zirac warrior by the throat and slammed him into the ground with bone-shattering force. The entire arena went silent. Even Malzir's expression darkened. Vaktar's voice echoed through the battlefield. "This is not a war. This is slaughter, and I will be no part of it." Then, looking directly at Danny, he growled, "Do it." Estrada didn't hesitate. She detonated the disruptor. ### the turning point. A burst of electromagnetic energy ripped through the battlefield. The air shimmered. The Zirac warriors staggered, clutching their heads as their neural link collapsed. Malzir snarled. His warriors had gone from an unstoppable unit to 5 individual brutes, and in that instant, the human struck. Danny launched herself forward, fists moving faster than thought, a precise strike to the throat. A kick to a destabilized knee. A brutal elbow to the temple. Holt fired armor-piercing rounds point-blank, the bullets tore through biometal plating, sending the Zirac reeling. Estrada lobbed another explosive, a kinetic compression charge. It detonated under one of the warriors, crushing its ribcage from the inside out. Within seconds, 3 Zirac warriors lay broken in the dust. Vaktar turned to the final opponent, the largest of them all. Without hesitation, he ripped its head clean off. The crowd erupted. ### the aftermath. Malzir stood from his throne, his claws digging into the stone railing. The humans had done the impossible. His kill team, the best of his warriors, had fallen. Vaktar turned toward him. "You have already lost." Malzir's eyes burned with hatred. No, his voice was a growl. "This is far from over." The Emperor stepped forward, looking down at the victorious humans. "If you wish to challenge the Dominion, then you will face me." The stadium went silent. Kane clenched his fists. "Well," he muttered. "That escalated quickly." Danny grinned despite her injuries. "I was hoping for a real fight." Malzir's teeth gleamed in the artificial light. "You will regret those words, human." The Zirac kill team stood taller, stronger, and faster than before. Whatever biological enhancement Malzir had triggered, it had turned the already formidable warriors into something even worse, ***monsters, ***. Danny Rains wiped the blood from her chin, rolling her shoulders despite the pain. "All right," she muttered. "Time to get serious." ### breaking the cycle. General Kane analyzed the Zirac's movements. They were no longer simply warriors, this was something beyond that. The creatures moved with perfect coordination, each acting as an extension of the others. "They're linked," Dr. Patel whispered through comms, staring at her data feed. "This enhancement, it's a neural synchronization. They're fighting as one." Kane didn't hesitate. "Then we break the link." Professor Renshaw had already come to the same conclusion. There's always a weak point in a system this complex. If we disrupt the synchronization, they lose their advantage. Holt locked and loaded. "Then let's find it before they rip us apart." #### the new attack. The first Zirac lunged at Holt, moving impossibly fast. Holt barely dodged, rolling away as the alien's claws tore through the stone arena floor like paper. Danny dashed forward, pivoting at the last second to deliver a brutal roundhouse kick to its head. This time, her blow barely staggered it. "They're absorbing damage better," she growled. Meanwhile, Estrada finished setting up her next explosive, one of her most dangerous yet. "This is an electromagnetic disruptor," she explained. "If their enhancement is tied to a neural network, this should fry it." Kane nodded. "Time it right." The Zirac warriors surged forward. Danny and Holt barely held the line, dodging, countering, but losing ground fast. Then, Vaktar moved. #### the warrior's choice. Vaktar, the only Zirac who had spoken to Danny before the match, had been watching the fight with an unreadable expression. He had seen something that even Malzir had not. The humans could win. They weren't like other species. They adapted. They endured. They fought dirty. And they didn't break. Something inside him shifted. With a sudden roar, he turned, not toward the humans, but toward his own kind. Before anyone could react, Vaktar grabbed the nearest Zirac warrior by the throat and slammed him into the ground with bone-shattering force. The entire arena went silent. Even Malzir's expression darkened. Vaktar's voice echoed through the battlefield. "This is not a war. This is slaughter, and I will be no part of it." Then, looking directly at Danny, he growled, "Do it." Estrada didn't hesitate. She detonated the disruptor. #### the turning point. A burst of electromagnetic energy ripped through the battlefield. The air shimmered. The Zirac warriors staggered, clutching their heads as their neural link collapsed. Malzir snarled. His warriors had gone from an unstoppable unit to 5 individual brutes, and in that instant, the human struck. Danny launched herself forward, fists moving faster than thought, a precise strike to the throat. A kick to a destabilized knee. A brutal elbow to the temple. Holt fired armor-piercing rounds point-blank, the bullets tore through biometal plating, sending the Zirac reeling. Estrada lobbed another explosive, a kinetic compression charge. It detonated under one of the warriors, crushing its ribcage from the inside out. Within seconds, 3 Zirac warriors lay broken in the dust. Vaktar turned to the final opponent, the largest of them all. Without hesitation, he ripped its head clean off. The crowd erupted. #### the aftermath. Malzir stood from his throne, his claws digging into the stone railing. The humans had done the impossible. His kill team, the best of his warriors, had fallen. Vaktar turned toward him. "You have already lost." Malzir's eyes burned with hatred. No, his voice was a growl. "This is far from over." The Emperor stepped forward, looking down at the victorious humans. "If you wish to challenge the Dominion, then you will face me." The stadium went silent. Kane clenched his fists. "Well," he muttered. That escalated quickly. Danny grinned despite her injuries. "I was hoping for a real fight." Malzir's teeth gleamed in the artificial light. "You will regret those words, human." The arena was silent. Thousands of alien spectators sat frozen in their seats, barely daring to breathe. Even the Accord officials seemed unsure of what to do. A Zirac Emperor had never personally entered the games before. Malzir stood at the edge of the arena, towering over even the massive Zirak warriors that had just been defeated. His black bioarmor pulsed with an eerie crimson glow, shifting and expanding as he stepped down onto the battlefield. Vaktar clenched his fists. "You shouldn't have done that," he muttered to the humans. Danny Rains cracked her knuckles, rolling her shoulders. "I disagree. #### A true monster enters the ring. Voss Keln, still seated in the VIP stands, turned to Telvanna. "We cannot allow this. The Emperor is not bound by the rules of the games." Telvanna shook her head. "If we interfere, the Dominion will claim the Accord fears true combat." General Kane exhaled sharply. "So this is happening." Professor Renshaw analyzed Malzir's movements through his HUD. "I hope you weren't expecting another brute force fighter. That thing isn't just a warrior, he's an apex predator." Malzir's voice echoed across the battlefield. "You think yourselves victorious because you defeated my kill team?" He spread his arms wide. "They were soldiers. I am war." Then he vanished. #### The Emperor strikes. Holt barely had time to react before Malzir appeared behind him. A brutal backhand sent him skidding across the arena floor, armor sparking against stone. Danny threw a lightning-fast punch at Malzir's ribs, but the Emperor caught her fist mid-strike. The force sent shockwaves through the air, but Malzir didn't even flinch. Danny's eyes widened. "Oh shit." With terrifying strength, Malzir lifted her off the ground by her fist and slammed her into the dirt. Estrada and Kane opened fire, but Malzir weaved between the bullets. The shots that did hit barely fazed him. He was faster, stronger, and tougher than anything they had faced before. #### Finding the weakness. Dr. Patel's voice cut through the comms. "His speed, it's unnatural. He's warping space in microbursts. He's not moving fast, he's shortening the distance between movements." Renshaw's eyes lit up. "Then we need to overload his control." Kane turned toward Estrada. "Think you can rig a concussive disruption?" Estrada was already reaching for her gear. "Give me 60 seconds. Kane nodded. "Holt, Danny, buy us some time. ###. The Unstoppable versus the Unbreakable ****. Danny wiped blood from her lip and spat. "All right, Emperor. Round 2. She surged forward, adapting. Instead of direct strikes, she feinted, forcing Malzir to react. The moment he moved, Holt fired explosive rounds, aiming for where the Emperor would be. The trick worked, **** for a moment, ****. Malzir growled in irritation, then upped his speed. In an instant, he was behind Holt, claws raised for the kill. Before he could strike, Vaktar tackled him. The traitorous Zirak roared as he locked Malzir in a crushing grip. "You want a challenge, my Emperor?" he snarled. "Then fight something your own size." Malzir roared in fury and twisted free, throwing Vaktar across the battlefield. But that brief delay was all Estrada needed. "Get clear," she shouted. A massive pulse charge detonated, sending out a wave of concussive force that disrupted Malzir's spatial warping. His body flickered. For the first time, he was forced into normal motion. Kane didn't hesitate. **** now, ****. Turning the tide. Danny and Holt launched a coordinated attack. With Malzir unable to teleport, his speed advantage was gone. Danny landed a full-powered knee to his ribs, Holt fired at point-blank range, and Kane drove a plasma blade straight into Malzir's side. The Emperor staggered. The crowd gasped. For the first time, Malzir bled. The Zirak ruler snarled, but his breathing was heavier now. He looked down at the wound in disbelief. "You," his voice was cold. "Are vermin." He raised his arms, and the ground itself cracked. The entire arena began to collapse. Kane's eyes widened. "He's bringing the whole damn stadium down." Voss Kelm turned to his officials. "Evacuate the spectators, asterisk asterisk now, asterisk asterisk. Telvanna's mandibles clicked in horror. He'd rather destroy everything than admit defeat. Renshaw shook his head. No. He's changing the battlefield. As the stadium crumbled, Malzir rose into the air, his body pulsing with raw energy. The fight wasn't over. The arena collapsed. Stone and metal crumbled as Malzir's power tore through the battlefield. The once magnificent Colosseum was now a graveyard of shattered pillars and smoking debris. The crowd screamed as evacuation ships rushed to extract them. But down in the wreckage, the fight was far from over. ### surviving the collapse. Dany Rains coughed as dust filled her lungs. She rolled off a broken slab of stone, wincing at the sharp pain in her ribs. The others were scattered across the ruins. Holt was pulling himself out from under a pile of rubble, Estrada was dazed but alive, and Kane was already barking orders through the comms. But Malzir? The Emperor floated above them, untouched by the destruction. His bioarmor pulsed, regenerating from his wounds. He looked angrier than ever. "You have defied me long enough," he growled, voice reverberating through the ruins. "No more games. No more honor. You all die." Then he descended. ### A battle among ruins. The Emperor launched himself at Kane first. The general barely raised his plasma blade in time to parry, but the sheer force of Malzir's strike sent him flying. He crashed into a fallen pillar, coughing up blood. Holt opened fire with his armor-piercing rounds. Every bullet hit, but Malzir didn't even flinch. He blurred toward Holt in an instant and delivered a devastating punch to his chest plate, sending the soldier sprawling. Dany attacked next, aiming for Malzir's exposed ribs where she had injured him earlier. But this time, the Emperor was ready. He caught her mid-air and hurled her straight through a crumbling wall. Estrada, barely on her feet, reached for her explosives. Malzir saw her. He extended a hand, and a pulse wave of energy obliterated the ground around her, sending her tumbling into the abyss below. The battlefield had changed. The humans had fought well, but now, they were losing. ### Vakhtar's last stand. Malzir turned to finish off the team, only for Vakhtar to slam into him with all his might. The two titans clashed, shaking the ruins around them. Vakhtar fought like a beast unleashed, his blows fast and relentless. He wasn't holding back. "You were never worthy of this throne, Malzir," Vakhtar snarled. "You rule through fear, not strength." Malzir roared, grappling his former warrior. "And yet, here you kneel." With one final brutal strike, he shattered Vakhtar's knee, forcing him down. Then, with terrifying precision, he drove his claws straight through Vakhtar's chest. The warrior gasped. Blood dripped from his mouth. But even as he fell, he turned his gaze to Dany, to Kane, to Holt. And he smiled. ****, end this, ****. Then he collapsed, motionless. Dany's fists clenched. Holt's jaw tightened. Kane wiped the blood from his face. The humans rose. ### The final plan. Dr. Patel's voice crackled through the comms. "Listen to me. The energy Malzir is using, it's connected to his armor. If we can overload it, he'll be vulnerable." Kane nodded. "How?" "I can rig Estrada's remaining explosives into an overload feedback loop, but someone has to get close enough to plant it." Dany wiped the blood from her chin. "I'll do it." Holt shook his head. "You're barely standing." Kane smirked. "So are we." Dany looked at her team. They were battered, bleeding, exhausted. But they weren't beaten. Never beaten. Kane sighed. "All right, people. One last fight. ### The final charge." Malzir turned toward them, sensing their determination. He laughed. "You don't know when to quit, do you?" Kane grinned. "No. We really don't." Then they charged. Holt provided covering fire, forcing Malzir to dodge. Kane rushed from the left, keeping the Emperor distracted. Danny sprinted through the wreckage, closing the gap. Malzir saw her coming. "You think I don't know your plan?" He raised a hand, and a bolt of raw energy erupted toward her. At the last second, Holt threw himself in front of the blast. The energy strike hit him square in the chest. His body crashed against the ruins, unmoving. Danny's eyes flared with fury. She jumped. Malzir swung, too late, Danny landed on his chest, slamming the explosive charge directly onto his armor. The Emperor's eyes widened. No. Danny leapt away. Kane hit the detonator. The Emperor falls. A massive shockwave erupted as the feedback loop activated. Malzir screamed as his bioarmor twisted and cracked, energy surging out of control. The same power that made him invincible was now tearing him apart. He stumbled, dropping to one knee. "No," he rasped. "I am Malzir. I am the Dominion." Danny stepped forward. "Not anymore." With one final, earth-shattering punch, she drove her fist into his face. Malzir collapsed. For the first time in history, an emperor of the Zirak Dominion had fallen. Victory, and loss. The ruins went still. The humans stood, battered, bruised, but victorious. Kane exhaled slowly. "It's over." But Danny's heart dropped as she turned to where Holt had fallen. She rushed to his side, shaking him. "Holt! Come on, man, wake up." He coughed, barely conscious. You better have one." Danny laughed, eyes wet. "Damn right we did." Estrada, miraculously alive, limped over. "So what now?" Above them, Accord warships descended. Voss Keln stood at the edge of the ruins, looking down at the battlefield with awe. "The Dominion is broken," he said. "And the galaxy has just witnessed it." Kane looked at the horizon. "No," he muttered. "The galaxy just witnessed the birth of something new." Danny grinned. "Yeah. They just learned what happens when you mess with Earth's champions." The ruins of the arena smoldered, shattered stone and twisted metal littering the battlefield. Malzir, the Emperor of the Zirak Dominion, lay motionless, defeated. His once impenetrable bioarmor was cracked and smoldering, his once mighty presence reduced to silence. And above it all, the humans still stood. The aftermath. Danny Rains wiped the blood from her lip, surveying the wreckage. Holt, bruised and barely able to move, gave her a thumbs up. Estrada was leaning against a fallen column, panting. General Kane, ever the soldier, had already switched to battlefield assessment mode. Dr. Patel's voice crackled over the comms. "Is he dead?" Kane exhaled. "If he isn't, he sure as hell isn't getting back up anytime soon." Accord warships descended, their landing thrusters kicking up dust. High Marshal Voss Keln stepped out first, flanked by a dozen heavily armed guards. Telvanna followed, her insectoid mandibles twitching in astonishment. Keln approached cautiously, eyes locked on Malzir's unmoving form. "You actually did it." Danny smirked. "You sound surprised." Keln shook his head. "I am. No one, not in the entire history of the games, has ever slain an Emperor of the Dominion." He turned to his aides. "Send the broadcast. The galaxy must know." Within moments, cameras and drones zipped through the ruins, capturing the destruction. The entire galactic community would soon see what had happened here. The unthinkable had occurred. The Dominion reacts. Across the Dominion's core worlds, the news spread like wildfire. The broadcasts played in every major city. The Emperor has fallen. Shock. Disbelief. Fear. Malzir's death was a crack in the foundation of Dominion rule. He had been seen as invincible, unstoppable. Now, he was broken and defeated, by humans. Many Xerac warriors, seeing their leaders fall, hesitated. Some even deserted. The iron grip of the Dominion was loosening. Hashtag a challenge to the galaxy. In the Accord Council chambers, an emergency session was called. Representatives from dozens of species debated furiously. This changes everything, one ambassador hissed. If the Dominion is truly weakened. It's more than that, Telvanna interrupted. She turned toward the humans. This proves something even more dangerous. Keln nodded. That humans are not just survivors. Not just warriors. They are something far worse. The room fell silent. Keln looked directly at Kane. They are champions. The word hung in the air. Hashtag the next move. Back on the warship Iron Will, the human team recovered. Holt's ribs were wrapped in medical patches, Estrada was drinking straight from a bottle of painkillers, and Danny was already hitting the punching bag in the training room. Kane entered, arms crossed. You know, most people take at least a week to recover from nearly getting vaporized. Danny shrugged. Most people aren't us. Kane sighed. You heard the news? Holt grinned. Oh, we heard. The Dominion is panicking. The Accord is freaking out. And every species with a grudge against the Xerac just saw the big bad Emperor go down like a punk. Estrada smirked. They're calling us Earth's champions. Danny raised an eyebrow. Not bad. I was expecting something like war criminals of Terra or the idiots who punched a god. Kane leaned against the wall. We've started something we can't undo. The galaxy knows about us now. Some will fear us. Some will want to use us. Others? His expression darkened. Others will want revenge. Danny cracked her knuckles. Let them come. Holt grinned. Yeah. We still haven't fought a planetary warlord yet. Could be fun. Kane sighed. I swear, you people are insane. Estrada smirked. That's what makes us dangerous. Hashtag the legend begins. The transmission had already spread. Across the stars, species whispered the same name. Humans. Not just warriors. Not just survivors. But champions. The Xerac Dominion was shaken. The Accord had a new force to reckon with. And the galaxy? It had just learned a brutal, undeniable truth. Earth does not lose. And this was just the beginning.